I never realized how a simple vitamin deficiency could steal my grandmother's strength. It started as a whisper, a murmur of concern that swirled around our family. I remember that day vividly. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows in our living room. I sat on the edge of my seat, heart racing as I watched her tremble, those once steady hands now quivering like leaves in an autumn storm. She was my rock. My grandmother had always been the fierce matriarch, the one who warned me about the dangers of the world with her ever-bright eyes. But now, those eyes were dulled, the vibrant spark dimming with each passing moment. "It's just a little tiredness, sweetie," she said, trying to smile. But her smile felt forced, pale against the backdrop of her fading spirit. We hovered, my family and I, caught in a web of fear and confusion. Something was off. Was it the weight she had lost? Or the way she would suddenly pause mid-sentence, as if the very air had turned heavy around her? I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath this ordinary surface. The doctor said it was just a vitamin deficiency, but something about it felt so much bigger, darker. The sound of her labored breaths echoed in the silence between us. I noticed the small bottles of pills she used to keep on the kitchen counter, each one a promise to herself to regain that lost vigor. But what if they were not enough? What if they couldn't bring her back? The thought clenched my chest like a vice. I remember the way my mama's voice trembled as she tried to keep it together, forced laughter spilling over like a broken dam. Aunt Debbie's tear-streaked cheeks told a different story, a silent plea woven into every shaky breath. In that moment, we were a collage of heartbreak, watching helplessly as the woman who raised us faded like an old photograph left in the sun, and then came the revelation. I found a dusty old book in her attic, filled with remedies and natural cures. Handwritten notes danced across the margins, speaking of vitamins in a way that felt supernatural. "These nutrients can restore life," one note warned, "but they can also be stolen by more than just the body." I shivered. What did she mean? My heart thudded painfully in my chest, a chorus of unease singing in my ears. As I stared at those tattered pages, I wondered what had my grandmother known that we didn't. How could something as mundane as a vitamin deficiency have such drastic implications? It felt like a warning wrapped in mystery. I took a deep breath, but the air felt charged, almost electric. There was fear, yes, but there was also a flicker of determination growing inside me, a desperate need to unravel the secret she hadn't shared. Maybe I was grasping at straws. Or maybe this was just the beginning of an unsettling journey, a journey that could change everything. What if the answers lay hidden in the shadows? What if I could save her before it was too late? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air was thick with worry, and as I ventured into my grandmother's past, I felt both drawn to her stories and terrified of what I might uncover. That night, after everyone had retreated to their rooms, I found myself sitting in the dim glow of the attic light, surrounded by boxes that cradled remnants of her vibrant life. Old photographs, forgotten trinkets, and letters stacked in piles, each whispering secrets of the woman I thought I knew so well. I picked up a framed picture, my grandmother as a young woman, holding my mother's hand, both faces so full of joy. The laughter in their eyes seemed to echo in that quiet space, inviting me to dig deeper. I reached for another box with a creaky lid, and there lay a treasure trove of forgotten remedies and scraps of paper. Tucked into one corner was a small velvet pouch, gently worn at the edges. Inside, I found an assortment of dried herbs. My heart raced. These could be the very remedy she had written about. As I cupped the pouch in my palm, memories washed over me, the way she brewed tea, infusing it with warmth, how she would insist that certain flavors could chase away the chill of a cold. But beyond the delightful warmth of her love lay a sense of urgency that gnawed at me. These herbs felt like pieces of a puzzle, hints at her understanding of what was happening beyond the gleam of surface explanations. Determined, I resolved to learn everything I could about holistic remedies and the properties of each herb I held. Perhaps there was more to this vitamin deficiency, something that could not be remedied by a simple store-bought supplement. I combed through her handwritten notes, each one both a guide and a map through the shadows I had begun to navigate. The next morning, with a newfound sense of purpose tinged with fear, I invited my mother to join me in my search for answers. Over coffee, I shared my findings, unable to suppress the trembling hope lingering in my chest. "Do you remember any of this, Mom?" I asked, showing her the old remedies. Her face fell, and for a moment, I feared I had plunged into a deep well of grief. "Yes," she said slowly, her voice quavering, "I remember her talking about those remedies. She used to say nature had a way of reclaiming itself. But it was just a hobby to her, something she dabbled in, not the focus of her life." She faltered, her gaze drifting to an invisible horizon. "After Dad died, she became more withdrawn. She never spoke of her fears, just pushed through like she always had. A knot twisted in my gut so tightly that I could hardly breathe. If my grandmother had been hiding her fears, what else had she kept from us?" I tried to dismiss the thought, yet it clung to me like a shroud. Driven by an urgency that could not be quenched, I delved deeper into research, adventuring into realms my grandmother had explored. Each tidbit of knowledge became a small promise to her. I wanted to awaken the fierce matriarch inside her again. I sought out local herbalists and perused the internet late into the night, slowly piecing together a plan. Then there was an unexpected knock on the door. It was Mrs. Anderson, the neighbor who had once shared my grandmother's love for gardening. She brought a small basket filled with fresh herbs from her own garden. "I couldn't help but think of your grandmother," she said, her eyes bright yet tinged with sorrow. She handed me the basket, her hands warm and comforting. "She taught me so much about these. Maybe they can help." In that moment, something inside me flickered, a small flame ignited by the kindness of a stranger who had loved my grandmother, reminding me that there was still love and care in the world. As I cradled the basket against my chest, dreams of reviving my grandmother's spirit began to swirl in my mind. Perhaps a combination of her remedies, along with Mrs. Anderson's knowledge, could weave a tapestry of healing. With evening approaching, the setting sun cast a warm golden hue outside that felt almost magical. But just as hope began to flourish, my phone buzzed sharply against the kitchen counter. It was a message from the doctor's office, the kind that twists your stomach into knots. "Please call us as soon as possible regarding your grandmother." My stomach tightened, and a chill spread through me. What did they want? Fear pierced through the veil of optimism, dragging me back into the shadows I had tried so hard to illuminate. As I stood at that precipice between hopeful determination and gut-wrenching anxiety, I realized that I was irrevocably on a path toward a revelation that could change everything. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. Whatever answer lay at the end of that call, it was just another piece of the puzzle, the kind that could either solidify my resolve or shatter it entirely. As I dialed the doctor's office, my mind spiraled through a whirlwind of questions, each one laced with apprehension. The phone rang, echoing in the silence that enveloped me like a heavy fog. The voice that finally answered was professional yet tinged with an undertone I couldn't ignore. "Hello, this is Nurse Claire. How can I help you?" "I received a message to call," I stammered, the words scraping from my throat. "It's about my grandmother." "Ah, yes," she replied, her voice softening. "We have some concerns regarding her recent test results. We'd like you to come in to discuss them." "Concerns?" The word hung in the air like a taunt. Suddenly, every ounce of hope I had gathered from Mrs. Anderson's kindness evaporated, replaced by a suffocating dread. "Is she—" "Please don't worry," Nurse Claire interjected, though the warmth in her tone did little to thaw the chill in my veins. "We just need to explore her options together. Can you come to the office tomorrow?" After reluctantly agreeing, I hung up, my heart weighed down with a tidal wave of uncertainty. How could I have let my grandmother's health slip beneath the surface? This reality clashed violently with my aspirations, the dream of rekindling her spirit through love and herbal remedies. I felt the walls of the house closing in, shadows creeping like whispers about decisions I hadn't made and paths not taken that evening. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, surrounded once more by my grandmother's remnants. I felt utterly alone in a sea of her memories. I buried my face in my hands, allowing the weight of my worry to spill over. What if I couldn't fix this? What if there wasn't a remedy, organic or otherwise, that could mend what was unraveling? but as despair dragged me into its depths, a rustle echoed from the boxes beside me. With hesitant curiosity, I pulled open a smaller container I had previously overlooked. Inside lay journals, some frayed and yellowed at the edges, their pages adorned with my grandmother's neat, flowing script. She had penned her thoughts, fears, and dreams with a passion that poured from every word. I gingerly flipped through the entries, each sentence an intimate portal into the woman who had once filled my childhood with warmth and wonder. In one passage, she wrote, "There is a tranquility in nature that helps soothe the soul. When life feels heavy, remember the earth holds the answers." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I found comfort in her revelations, little glimpses of her strength buried beneath the pain. As I read on, her words turned more fragmented thoughts interspersed with questions about her own health, concerns about the family, and a haunting reflection on loss. She had been grappling with her shadows, even when adorned in the vibrant fabric of charity. I had thought I was stepping onto the path of discovery, but it became apparent that I was merely skimming the surface of her battles. Each entry tightened a knot in my throat, and the weight of her unspoken struggles settled heavily in my chest. Dull evening light faded outside, casting muted shadows across the attic's floor. In that quiet moment, I recalled Mrs. Anderson's gift. Without hesitating, I gathered the fresh herbs and laid them out beside the journals. Maybe they weren't a cure but a reminder that connection persisted even in dark times. I spent hours sifting through the notes, piecing together simple tonics and brews that could nourish her body and spirit, but just as I began feeling the spark of hope glow tenuously in my chest, a voice pierced my solitude, my mother's. She stood at the attic door, a figure silhouetted against the dim light. Her expression held a strange cocktail of concern and determination. "What are you doing up here?" she breathed, stepping closer as if afraid the attic's shadows would swallow me. Finding her, I whispered, gesturing to the journals and herbs. "I thought I could help her, Mom." "If we just help her?" My mother's voice quivered. She talked about these things but she never wanted us to worry. She buried herself and worked to protect us from her fears. Maybe she didn't know how to reach out, I shot back, frustration and worry blending into one. And now it's our turn to reach in and pull her back. A moment of silence hung between us, a heavy awareness simmering beneath our exchange. My mother's eyes glistened as she took in the scattered remnants. "You should know," she finally said, her voice breaking. "When Dad died, Grandma tried to keep everything afloat, to be the stable one. But it broke her. I think we've just been coping." "I've been coping," she said quietly, defeat settling over her. Her admission crashed over me, a wave of sorrow that soaked my resolve. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine. We owe it to her to understand, to fight for what she has lost." I reached out and took her hands into mine, feeling the tremor there, echoing the fear rattling within. "I'm scared, too," she admitted, tears escaping down her cheeks, mirroring mine. "I don't know how to face whatever demons she has kept hidden." As we sat together, entwined in the weight of our family's shared struggle, a rush of determination swept through me. I was no longer alone. Her admission of vulnerability connected our hearts in a manner that felt both fragile and unbreakable. Together, we could dive into the depths of the unknown, but just as we began to weave a plan, there came yet another knock, a louder, more impatient sound this time. Before we could react, the door swung open, revealing a figure standing in the threshold, familiar yet unexpected. It was my grandmother's longtime friend, surprisingly radiant yet panicked. "I'm so sorry to intrude, but I need to speak with you," she said, her breath quickening. "It's important about your grandmother." A new wave of apprehension washed over me. What could be so urgent? My heart pounded as fear wrapped its fingers around my throat. With every passing second, the shadows deepened, teasing out an unraveling thread that could either tear us apart or bring us together. The air in the attic grew heavy as my grandmother's friend entered, her face a mixture of urgency and sorrow. "I didn't want to come over like this, but I couldn't just wait any longer," she exclaimed, glancing at the journals strewn across the floor before settling her gaze on us. "You need to know something about her health that may change everything." "What is it?" I urged, the words escaping my lips with a sharp edge, clinging to the strands of hope we had just started to weave. "It's the vitamin deficiency," she started, her voice trembling as she pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag. "I've been talking to her doctor about the test results, and she has been severely low in B12. It can cause so many issues: fatigue, confusion, even memory problems. I'm worried. A heavy silence fell, thickening the atmosphere around us. B12. It didn't seem like much at first, but as her words wrapped around me, my heart quickened, caught between a fragile sense of relief and paralyzing fear. So if we treat it, I began tentatively, can she get better? Potentially, she replied softly, but the tremor in her voice hinted at the uncertainty that accompanied the word. But it's critical to get her on supplements immediately. The doctor said that left untreated, it could lead to severe complications. My mother's hands shook as they instinctively reached for mine, grounding us in the whirlwind of revelations. The walls felt as if they were closing in yet again, the reality of frailty creeping out from the cracks where once there was strength. Where had I been, running on the fuel of my own ambitions, while my grandmother's well-being slipped through the cracks of my neglect? A river of guilt surged inside me, replacing the fragile hope with trepidation. What if I had been more aware? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Maybe I could have noticed? Maybe we all could have? We can't know everything, my mother said, her own fears haunting her voice. But we can act on what we do know now. There was an unwavering strength rising in her words, a flicker of resolve igniting in the darkness that hung over the entire conversation. But she needs our support in more than just vitamins, I interjected, feeling an urgency to expand the conversation. She needs her spirit lifted, too. Healing won't just come from a pill or a tonic. It's about community, love, and understanding. As we circled the lingering apprehension and dread with newfound purpose, the door creaked open wider, allowing the last rays of sunlight to spill into the attic. It felt like time was both stretching longer and rushing forward all at once, each moment filled with promises of connection, but also filled with the doubt of the past. After a long pause, my grandmother's friend nodded, the weight of our shared understanding linking us tightly. I've been with her through some tough times, and you're right. It has to be holistic. You'll need to support her emotionally. I've seen what a little love and attention can do. The possibility of nurturing my grandmother's spirit alongside her body sparked an ember of determination deep within me. We could host some kind of gathering, I blurted out. To bring the family together. Maybe restoring her connection to her friends and creating an atmosphere of warmth could help? Exactly, my mother chimed in, her eyes lighting up at the idea. And we can prepare her favorite meals. Food can be so much more than nourishment. It could reach places we didn't even know were hurting. Encouraged by our shared insight, we started brainstorming ideas, envisioning potlucks, flower arrangements, and even candlelit evenings filled with laughter and shared stories. A plan began to take shape, a spark illuminating the shadowy fear. However, just as hopeful anticipation filled the air, the atmosphere shifted with a sudden gust of unease as my grandmother's friend interrupted our planning. But there is something else. What now? I felt a twist of apprehension unfurling in my stomach. There's an incident, she said carefully, choosing her words as though they could cut deeper than intended. Recently, I overheard some talk among the family. It seems there's a lot more going on than just her health. The familiar shadows returned, testing the strength of our resolve. What do you mean? I asked, my voice pitching higher, heart racing as if it were in sync with the building tension. Rumors about a fall. And there are whispers about legal matters surrounding your grandmother's health. Her eyes darted between me and my mother, the gravity of her revelation weighing heavily. My breath hitched, dread pooling in my chest. Legal matters? What could that mean? I felt as if the ground beneath me was giving way, the supportive foundation of hope fractured by an emerging threat I hadn't anticipated. I think she hesitated, her voice thick with concern. You need to be aware of the family dynamics. Some want to step in and take over care. Others might just be watching for their own interests. Her words struck like lightning, electrifying the space between us, igniting fear and uncertainty in the pit of my stomach. Had the shadows swirling around my grandmother's health reached further into her relationships? What did this mean for our family, our plans, and our hopes? I need to talk to Grandma, I said, a new urgency sharpening my thoughts. We can't let this divide us. We need her to choose how she wants to move forward. But as I reached for my phone, glancing down to dial her number, a different wave of raw realization washed over me. If she had been hiding her struggles all this time, how could I trust that she hadn't also kept this looming thread of conflict from us? The thin veneer of our family's reality was cracking, and I feared what might lie beneath it, waiting to break free. I glanced back at my mother and her friend, both holding the same mixture of fear and determination, bonded together in the knowledge that we were standing on the precipice of something monumental. But with every heartbeat, the shadows beamed down on us, waiting to ensnare the hope we had fought so hard to reclaim. The warmth of the setting sun began to fade, casting elongated shadows across the attic floor as I wrestled with the revelation that had just shaken the very foundation of our plans. The air felt electric, thick with unsaid thoughts and unresolved emotions, and I knew I could not retreat into a world of ignorance, not now. "We must confront this head-on," I said, my voice both resolute and strained. "We can't operate under the assumption that everything is fine. We need to know where she stands, what she is feeling." My mother nodded slowly, her expression threading uncertainty with resolve. "You're right. But how do we address the deeper issues without overwhelming her? This has to come from a place of love and support." As I contemplated my grandmother's possible reactions, a familiar wave of guilt churned in my chest. A part of me, a selfish part, wondered if it would have been easier to let ignorance reign just a bit longer. The idea of diving into family dynamics felt daunting. We had spent so much time trying to mend the rifts in our relationships that the thought of reopening wounds felt like a betrayal to our efforts. "Let us go visit her together," I suggested, though I could feel the weight of dread building inside me. "We'll take her the B12 supplements straight away. And we can bring some of the things we talked about, like her favorite food. It might lighten the atmosphere." The soft rustle of my mother's nostalgic smile served as a reminder of how simple moments could bring joy amid turmoil. "Yes, focus on giving her something to look forward to. We can ease into the more serious subjects." I couldn't shake the gnawing concern about the shadowy rumors lurking behind our intent. What if we opened the door to family discussions, only to find manipulation lurking on the other side? My thoughts raced, cycling back to the idea of receiving clarity from my grandmother, what she truly wanted, not just what was easiest for us to assume. As we pushed open the front door to my grandmother's house, the familiar scent of lavender greeted us, wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. Every corner of her home whispered stories of resilience and comfort. Still, today, it felt like stepping into uncharted territory, a place where joy mingled with the unfamiliar scent of uncertainty. "Grandma?" I called, my heart thumping in my chest as we crossed the threshold into the living room. The sitting area was unchanged, the cushions still molded perfectly to her shape, the coffee table still cluttered with half-finished crossword puzzles and photo albums, a testament to her presence in this space. "We're here," my mother piped up cheerily, attempting to weave an atmosphere of fabricated normalcy in light of the heavy truths hovering above us. Time stretched as we waited, our hearts drumming in an anxious rhythm, until finally, my grandmother appeared. Her soft smile wavered, adjustments in her usually bright demeanor clear. "Hello, darlings," she said, her voice trailing softly like her strength, the words barely making it past the threshold of her lips. The moment was bittersweet, and with every passing heartbeat, I recognized the melancholy shadows not only of her physical health but of something deeper, an emotional fog encapsulating her. I approached cautiously, extending the small tote bag filled with her favorite treats. "Look what we brought." I held it up, my heart squeezing in that moment. "We thought it'd be nice to have a little treat together." Her gaze flickered to the bag, the shadows of her spirits ebbing momentarily as she reached for it. "You remembered my lemon bars," she said, a ghost of her lively spirit emerging with the warmth of fond memories nestled within her words. As we sat together, rays of sunlight streamed through the window, dancing across the surfaces of faded photographs that hung on the walls. But beneath that light, the weight of our reality lingered uncomfortably. I caught the eye of my mother, tracing her expression for guidance. But the comfort of my grandmother's laughter was teetering on the precipice of something heavier. "How are you feeling today, Grandma?" My mother ventured delicately, the question sweeping into the atmosphere like an aging butterfly taking flight, unsure of where it would land. My grandmother's brow furrowed, shadows passing across her face far deeper than mere fatigue. "I've been tired. Sometimes things seem a bit foggy." She started to stir, her fingers reflexively curling around the familiar texture of a quilt draped across the chair. Our hearts collectively sank, that one phrase pulling the threaded fabric of our plans taut. A more profound pain lurked beyond her words. It echoed the concerns the family had whispered about, the frantic edge of trepidation gnawing at my resolve. Before I could muster my next inquiry, there was a sudden knock on the door. The sound reverberated through the house, interrupting our fragile moment. "I'll get it," my mother offered, heading towards the entrance. I watched as her figure slipped away, dread coiling tightly around my chest. Who was it? What did they want? 100 possibilities flashed through my mind, twisting in sync with urgency. They could be family members with intentions buried under layers of unresolved tension, a connection to the darker side of the whispers we had just been reminded of. As I turned back to my grandmother, the last hint of distraction slipping away, her eyes glistened with something more than fatigue, the ever-growing depth of vulnerability that was slowly enveloping her. "Sweetheart, there is something I really..." But the door swung open wide, and I caught only a glimpse of my mother's stiffened shoulders as she froze, her expression metamorphosing from surprise to uncertainty. I leaned closer to catch the words that echoed through the silence. "Didn't he think you'd be here today?" A voice rang, steady yet chillingly uninviting. The air shifted, and an icy shiver coursed through me. As the figure stepped into the house, I recognized him instantly, a cousin I had always seen in the background, someone I hadn't spoken to in years but who carried an unsettling reputation, an opportunist wrapped in charm, with motives often shrouded in a mist of self-interest. "Hello, everyone," he said smoothly, as if an unseen barrier had crumbled entirely. The tension in the room thickened. There seemed to be a sudden rush of fear, the weight of impending confrontation lurking just behind those polite smiles. My grandmother's expression sank alongside my heart. This was not the time for distractions, this was not what we had envisioned for today. I felt a pulse of urgency, but the familiar shadows deepened around us, watching, waiting, ready to claim what they desired. "Just how far do you plan to get with this, now?" I thought, a new sense of foreboding tightening around the very same threads of hope I had so carefully sewn thus far. What had been a journey to rediscover love had suddenly ruptured, exposing the jagged edges of the impending conflict, lurking, hungry, and insatiable. The small living room brimmed with a tense silence, the air thick with possibilities and unspoken words. My cousin's presence twisted the emotional landscape we had begun to navigate with cautious optimism. I felt my heart race as I locked eyes with my grandmother, only to find her looking down, her fingers trembling over the quilt. "Isn't this a surprise?" my mother said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, her voice strained under the weight of uncertainty. "We were just enjoying some time together." "Of course," my cousin replied, his gaze flitting around the room before settling on me. "I heard you were in town." His words dripped with an unsettling mixture of familiarity and guardedness. "Thought I might stop by to see how everyone's holding up." A shadow passed over my grandmother's face as though the clouds outside weighed heavily upon her. I caught a fleeting glimpse of the joy she had summoned for us moments before, a fragile blossom threatened by a sudden frost. "Everything is just fine, James," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We were about to enjoy some lemon bars." I motioned to the bag as if holding it aloft could ward off the invisible storm brewing outside our little bubble. He chuckled softly, but there was an edge to it that set my teeth on edge. "Lemon bars? Delicious." His tone turned a shade darker. "But you know, sweets can only sugarcoat the truth for so long." "James," my mother interjected, her voice taut with tension. "Maybe it's best if you..." He raised a hand, silencing her. "I'm here now. The truth is, you can't just overlook what's happening. It's too serious for sweetness." His eyes bore into mine, an intense challenge looming within their depths. "Perhaps you should leave," my mother began again, but my grandmother, weak yet fierce, suddenly lifted her chin. "Let him stay," she said with a tremor, her quiet resolve igniting a faint spark of defiance. My pulse quickened at how vulnerable she sounded. "He can hear everything. We can't hide." "Hide what, Grandma?" I asked, cringing inwardly as the weight of our uncharted conversations loomed ever larger. She shifted her gaze to me, determination flickering in her eyes. "I've been hiding too much, and I think it's time to talk, whatever it is." James smirked, as though he were grading our family's performance on a scale of revelation. That sounds like a plan, he remarked, leaning back in a chair, the very picture of composure amid our quaking hearts. Might as well clear the air, right? As much as I resented his intrusive confidence, the pressure was starting to sneak up on me. The charade we had been trying to uphold felt increasingly untenable. How much longer until everything came crashing down around us? My mother shifted nervously beside me, her hand brushing against mine. I grasped her fingers, wishing for some strength to bolster the spirits in the room, searching for a snippet of that cozy familiarity we had always cherished. I knew I needed to guide our conversation carefully now, lest we spiral further into the depths of discomfort. Grandma, can you tell us what's been on your mind? I leaned forward, trying to draw her out, eyes searching for a spark of courage. She inhaled deeply, the air catching like a caught breath. I've been afraid, she uttered at last, her words thick with weariness. Afraid that I won't be here much longer to help you navigate these waters on my own. A tingling silence enveloped us, both heart-wrenching and haunting. Time stretched as my heart sank, every pulse echoing my fears. We were wading deeper into uncharted territory, and with each word she uttered, I felt layers of denial peeling away, revealing the raw, pulsing heart of our reality. The sound of silence exploded around us, and I sensed James leaning in, mischief sparkling in his eyes, as if he were the only one with an active pulse at that moment. And don't you think that honesty, true honesty, might just be what this family needs to heal? Absolutely, my mother responded heatedly, her earlier calm evaporating. But honesty can be compassionate. You don't need to take judgmental pleasure in our vulnerability. I'm not judging, he said, voice smooth. Just observing. This is about survival now, isn't it? He locked onto my gaze, pinpointing what he could interpret as weakness. Survival of what? I shot back, quaking with indignation and fear. Are you here to offer support, or are you planning to exploit her like you've done before? The tension peaked, shards of betrayal slicing through the air. My grandmother gripped the quilt tighter, her anguish evident. Enough, she murmured softly, her voice commanding yet frail. I refused to let this turn into another family argument. But the air had shifted too dramatically, shadows of turmoil loomed far too closely upon us. James's lips twitched in response, his glint unyielding. You can't avoid the conversation forever. We need to face the facts in more ways than one. Then, in an attempt to suppress the looming chaos, I focused back on my grandmother. Then let us talk, Grandma. We're all here. Let us just be honest, together. But before she could respond, the door swung open again, this time revealing my aunt, her expression a mixture of compassion and alarm. What's going on here? I could feel the tension from outside. As the world outside continued to spin on its axis, and its relentless march hurtled us towards unforeseen truths, I turned towards my grandmother, imprisoned by the dread of what we would soon uncover, what lay hidden beneath the layers of love, fear, and familial chaos. In that fleeting moment, as I grasped her frail hands, I knew one thing for sure: the light that had promised hope felt distant, smothered by the encroaching shadows. And we were standing at the edge of something grand and terrible, something that could unravel everything. The sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, casting long golden stripes across the floor and the faces sitting around the table. My aunt's voice still echoed in my mind, a fragile bridge between two worlds, the chaotic surface of our familial struggles and the depths of unspoken fears lurking just beneath. I watched my grandmother's face contort with anxiety as she was drawn into the whirlwind of emotions swirling around us. We were just having a conversation, Lila, my mother said, her voice even but thick with unspent words. You should sit down. It seems we need all hands on deck. But Lila remained standing by the doorway, her brow furrowed, determination battling concern like a flurry of fallen leaves caught in a storm. No, this is honestly the first I've heard of it. I just got a strange feeling something was off. It's not uncommon for our family to have such feelings, isn't it? Yes, my cousin James interjected, his smirk now a shadow of something darker. It is odd for a family known for their secrets to suddenly command honesty. Perhaps the truth is more potent than any medicine we've been taking. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in resonance with the demands of the moment. The knot in my stomach tightened as I caught my mother's fearful glance, her eyes pleading for resolution, while my grandmother merely stared at her hands, the subtle tremors betraying her fragility. Can we allow ourselves to breathe? I ventured, trying to steer the conversation toward calmer waters even as my own turmoil bubbled just below the surface. What's the point of secrecy if it only threatens to suffocate us? Lila stepped forward, her presence a protective wall. Sweetheart, if you feel ready to talk, I'd like to help guide us through this. But let us not let James lay claim to our truths like a scavenger sorting through old memories. Oh, but I'm just here to lend encouragement, James quipped. There is no treasure to be found when nothing valuable has been buried. James, my aunt warned, but something in her voice held a quiver of uncertainty. I took another chance, searching my grandmother's eyes for signs, for safety in the void that stretched around us. Grandma, can you tell us about how you've been feeling? Maybe this will shed some light, some hope? Her eyes crinkled at the corners, exhaustion etched deeply into her features. I feel so tired, my dear, she finally managed to whisper, her voice like a gust of wind searching for a solid foundation. There are days when getting out of bed feels monumental, like climbing a mountain without the strength to reach the summit. I can't seem to recharge. Lila's hand reached for her sister's, placing it over my grandmother's quivering fingers, an act of solidarity and love. You are not alone in this. We are all here with you. Little ripples of solidarity flowed through the room, however fragile. I watched my family convene like a quilt, patchworked with shared experiences but often stained with misunderstandings and unbridled truths. A sudden thought pierced through my mind, a possibility I had not grasped until now, a revelation that lingered just beyond reach. Could it be health-related? Is it something more? I asked, an urgency igniting my fear. It's not just emotional fatigue, is it? Have you seen a doctor, Grandma? James chuckled lightly, eyeing us like a predator observing prey. A vitamin deficiency could steal anyone's strength, you know enough, James. My mother's voice cut through his taunts like a sharpened blade. We need to focus. Grandma, don't you think we should look into this? For your health? The moment limped toward silence, thickening the air with uncertainty. I waited, breath held tightly in my chest, grasping to the hope that every shadow falling over us could drive us toward clarity rather than despair. I have an appointment this week, she finally admitted, the words spoken with an odd mix of relief and fear. Lila squeezed her hand tightly, a symbol of unwavering sisterhood. Good. That's a start. Support comes from sunlight, like you said. James squinted for a moment, the glint of his earlier confidence dimming. I suppose even the faintest light can help someone. Like he stopped abruptly, hovering on the precipice of something unkind as his gaze drifted toward me, so familiar but so laden with contempt. What? Someone like what? I prodded, emboldened by anxiety pent up over years. But before James could respond, a sudden sharp knock reverberated through the door, echoing loudly as though the world outside was frantic to intrude. My heart quickened, a jumble of anxiety and anticipation intertwining within me. What now? Who was it? Stay here, Lila commanded, a protective nature coming to fruition as she turned toward the door. I leaned forward, longing to follow, to hear whatever awaited us on the threshold. The room was punctuated with an electrifying suspense, shadows loomed, cries just out of reach. As Lila opened the door, the afternoon light flooded the room, washing over us in a haze. The outline of a figure stood framed against the brightness, silhouetted with urgency and an air of unexpected determination. Is she here? The voice exclaimed, laden with an urgency bridged only by desperation. In that moment, my heart plummeted, time suspended as the world slipped toward a revelation that could shatter our fragile truth. Who was this unexpected visitor, and what did they know that could change everything? I could scarcely breathe as the glimmer of hope and fear twisted together, an all-consuming reality surging with uncertainty. Would this new twist reveal long-hidden secrets or push us further into the darkness we were trying so desperately to confront? The figure at the door remained a mystery, obscured by the brilliance of the afternoon light, an ethereal halo that made them appear both distant and immediate. My heart raced with each passing heartbeat, the atmosphere thickening with the weight of unanswered questions. Lila hesitated, glancing back at us, her expression revealing a mix of courage and apprehension. Who are you? She finally asked, her voice steady. I'm sorry to barge in like this, but I need to speak with your grandmother, the stranger replied, their voice quivering with a sense of urgency that gnawed at the edges of my calm. The inch of space between the door and the frame seemed to vibrate with tension, and I felt the collective breath of my family, held tight in expectation. My grandmother stirred in her seat, her eyes narrowing with both recognition and confusion. Who sent you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper against the backdrop of the looming confrontation. "I am a nurse from the clinic," they said, stepping slightly forward to reveal a soft face marred by worry. "I came to discuss an urgent matter. It's about your recent lab results." Silence fell, the kind that wraps around you, isolating you as if the very air has grown heavy. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in, echoing the thud of my racing heart. Grandmother's hand trembled in Lila's grip as she turned to face the stranger fully, confusion mingling with dread. "Lab results?" my grandmother repeated, but her voice quivered, the words seeming to tangle within her throat. We all held our breath, collectively on edge like the last leaf clinging to a branch in autumn. "Yes," the nurse persisted, "I'm afraid there are complications that need to be discussed immediately. It's about your anemia, and the other factors that could be affecting your health." A murmur swept through the room, a breeze of apprehension clashing with bursts of quiet reflection. "What do you mean, complications?" Lila interjected, her protective instinct rising to the forefront. The nurse pressed their lips together, weighing the words as if deciding which truth could bear the light of day. "You're not just low on vitamins, ma'am. We've identified some troubling signs. You'll need further tests, possibly treatment." The declarative weight of their statement echoed within me, swirling like a tempest. I wanted to scream, to drive away the dark clouds gathering around us, but I simply sat there, a mute witness to the unraveling of everything I thought I understood. My grandmother's face blanched as realization washed over her. "But I thought it was just fatigue." I didn't think her words trailed into silence, drifting toward a future that felt eerily out of reach. "Please, let us sit down and talk about this," the nurse offered gently, stepping further into the room, attempting to soothe the rising tide of fear. But I could see my grandmother's shoulders sinking under the sudden weight of impending doom, every breath becoming heavier, filled with the dread of a future she had never contemplated. With uncertainty brewing within me, I sought solidarity in my surroundings. I turned to my family, their eyes filled with various reflections of fear and confusion. James, usually so composed, wore an expression softened by concern. "Maybe this is what you needed to hear," he murmured, barely above a whisper, a glimmer of genuine empathy breaking through his usual cynicism. Still, my emotions were a vortex. "Does anyone else feel like we're being swept away? This shouldn't be happening now," I burst out, my voice echoing with frustration that desperately sought resolution. Lila shifted her gaze from me to my grandmother, taking in the moment with a heavy heart. "Grandma, we're here with you. You've fought through so much already. You need to lean on us now." But within that moment of solidarity and hope, fear still gnawed at my core. What if these complications revealed secrets we weren't ready to face? My mind raced to connections I hadn't examined closely before. Could this health crisis expose deeper wounds, long hidden beneath fragile layers? Just then, the door shuddered as another knock broke through the fragile stillness, louder and more insistent this time. We all stiffened, every eye darting toward the entrance. Lila's stance shifted protectively, her brow furrowing. "Who could that be?" With a nod, she approached the door again, and I felt a coil of anxiety bind my chest tighter. I could hardly breathe with the vortex of uncertainty swirling within me. Each second stretched interminably as I sensed the weight of the moment holding the fate of my grandmother and our family in its hands. As the door opened once more, a familiar face stepped into the fray, a man I never expected to see again, my estranged father. I heard about Grandma, and I thought maybe she needs me," he stammered, his voice shaky with emotion, as if he were reaching for redemption in the wreckage. Time stopped. The precarious facade of resolution I had been desperately building fractured before me, collapsing under the weight of unanticipated truths and unresolved tensions. There, in that one moment, I understood that my family was not just faced with the turmoil of health and honesty but a living history that threatened to resurface and unravel everything I hoped would finally heal. The tension in the room coiled tighter as my estranged father stood in the doorway, a ghost from the past that none of us had expected to see. I felt the air thicken with unspoken words, each breath heavy with memories we had tried to bury. My grandmother, fragile yet resolute, looked at him with a mixture of recognition and uncertainty. Cameron, she whispered, his name hanging in the air like the promise of a storm. Her eyes had not dulled with age, but rather sharpened with the kind of wisdom that only life's trials bestow. I could see the flicker of hope in her gaze, twisted with doubt. Could this really be the moment my father redeemed himself? Lila, always the one to assess the emotional landscape, glanced between my father and my grandmother, her own apprehension zigzagging through the room. "What do you want, Dad?" I blurted out before he could step across that threshold, my own protectiveness flaring like a flame against the cold. "I just want to see her," he stammered, raising his hands in a gesture that begged for understanding. "I want to help." "Help?" I echoed incredulously, bitter laughter escaping me. "After all these years of absence, you think showing up now makes everything okay?" Lila placed a hand gently on my arm, her warmth a reminder to breathe. "Give him a chance," she urged quietly. "Maybe he genuinely wants to help." "Help?" I scoffed, a low growl of frustration building inside me. This isn't a matter of needing help to change a tire or cook dinner. This is Grandma's health we're talking about. Even to my own ears, my words were sharper than I intended, laced with the hurt of memories that haunted every corner of our history, resonating like an echo refusing to fade into the silence of forgotten things. "I can't change the past, but I need to be here for her now even if it's too late," he insisted, his voice trembling, shaky like the ground beneath our feet. "Please, I know I've made mistakes, but I want to make this right. I want to be part of her life again." The room pulsed with tension, an unsteady harmony of nostalgia and resentment. Grandmother's gaze softened just a fraction, and for a brief moment, she seemed to wrestle with the gravity of the moment, possibly pondering something buried deep within her heart. "You've disappointed me more times than I can count, Cameron," she finally spoke, her voice steady despite the weight of history. "But I won't deny that this news is worrying." I could see her struggle to anchor herself, her hand gently clutched by Lila, who maintained a presence like an offering of strength. "And I don't want to close any doors if they might help me move forward." My chest tightened as her words hung heavily in the air, an olive branch to a man I thought had lost his way for good. It sparked new frustration within me, the notion that my grandmother could be swayed so easily was infuriating. How many times had he walked away when we needed him? "I've been doing my best to care for you, Grandma," I said, my voice quieter but trembling with emotion, layered with everything unsaid. "I don't need him swooping back in, acting like he can fix what he broke." As I rushed through the words, fear and anger battled within me. The uncertainty of Grandma's health compounded with the unpredictability of my father's presence was almost suffocating. "I didn't mean to put more stress on you," my father said softly, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I just heard you were in trouble, and I needed to act by showing up after all these years?" I interrupted, feeling the need to defend not just my grandmother, but a family bond so frail it felt like it could snap at any moment. Suddenly, Lila stepped forward, her voice cloaked in quiet authority. "This isn't about you, Cameron. It's about Grandma's health. Don't turn this into something it's not." Her eyes searched each of ours, a grounding force amidst chaos. "We need to focus on her right now. Let us talk about the next steps." As uncertainty filled the room, I felt small, trapped in a whirlwind of familial complexities I had never wanted to confront. At that moment, my grandmother's well-being felt paradoxically intertwined with our collective pain and struggles. I felt torn between wanting to protect her and wanting to shield myself from the storm that could pour outwards from bygone days. My grandmother turned, almost fragile, directing her attention to my father once more. "I may need you, but that doesn't mean I'll make it easy for you, Cameron. You have a lot to prove if I'm to trust you again." In that moment of clarity, I saw the flicker of light in a shadowed place, hope laced with skepticism. Yet, as we leaned into conversations of health and trust, a faint awareness crept back into view, the remnants of those lab results swirling in the fog of anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more depth to this month's health scare than mere anemia. As I looked at my father, I knew that truth could very well be as potent as any impending diagnosis, the kind of truth that shatters reality, changing everything we think we know about ourselves and each other. Just then, a sharp ring from my phone cut through the charged atmosphere, an unexpected reminder of the outside world crashing against our fragile moment. I glanced at the screen, and my heart dropped. It was the clinic. My breath caught as I realized that whatever was on the other side of that call could alter the fabric of our family forever. With shaky hands, I answered, my pulse quickening, caught between the happiness and fear of what could unfold next. I opened the door to the unknown, hoping against hope that the truth would not betray us all. Every shadow in the room seemed to magnify as I answered the call from the clinic, the weight of the moment thick as smoke surrounding my family. Hello? I managed, my voice shaking like leaves caught in a storm. The nurse's voice came through, soothing yet firm, wrapping around me with a mix of urgency and hope. We have your grandmother's test results, she said. This was it. The moment of revelation that could either shatter us or mend the unraveling threads of our lives. Can you tell me what they say? Is she all right? My heart pounded, counting each agonizing second as I clung to every fragment of hope I had left. Your grandmother has a severe B12 deficiency, which can lead to cognitive issues and fatigue. But coupled with her symptoms, we found signs of potential neuropathy. My stomach dropped. I turned, glancing at my grandmother, her face pale and etched with confusion. Is that serious? I whispered, my fingers trembling over the phone. Yes, it requires immediate action. We need to begin treatment to restore her vitamin levels, and she should see a specialist as soon as possible. The gravity of the words washed over me in waves of fear and determination, crystallizing in that moment everything we had been fighting against. I relayed the information to my family, my voice trembling with urgency. They want her to start treatment immediately. It's not just about vitamins anymore. As my mother's eyes widened and James quietly absorbed the news, I pressed my hand against my grandmother's trembling one, trying to instill a sense of firmness and strength into her frail form. We're going to face this together, Grandma. You are not alone. Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked around at the faces surrounding her, faces full of pain, but also love, healing, and renewed purpose. The urgency to lift her spirits enveloped us, the light of connection weaving through the air like a lifeline. Never thought I'd see the day when I'd have everyone here, discussing my health like it's the latest gossip, she chuckled softly, yet the weight of unhealed wounds and lived history lingered beneath the surface. Lila stepped forward, reaching for her sister's hand, anchoring her in the present. We're here to support you, and we'll figure this out together. Cameron, she began, her voice breaking. I know there have been wrongs between us, but now is not the time. Let us set aside the past and focus on what lies ahead. The fragile peace tumbled precariously as my father shifted, vulnerable yet hopeful. You can count on me, Mom. I'll support you however I can. Not everyone was convinced, but there was no time for doubt to creep back in. I seized the moment, seeing the flickers of healing beginning to penetrate the darkness. This is a new beginning. Let us start with the vitamins, the specialist, and the love we surround you with, Grandma. We can be there for each other this time. But just as hope danced on the horizon, another unexpected knock echoed through the room. It was persistent, almost insistent. My heart raced as my instinct kicked in, ready to protect. The door opened to reveal a face I hadn't expected, a cousin who had always lived on the fringes of our family, a person swept along by the tides of our collective drama. I heard about Grandma's condition from James, she said quietly, her voice laced with genuine concern. I want to help. I can lend support, too. I don't want to be a stranger anymore. At that moment, something shifted in the air, a tide of connection. With every new entry, be it joyful or hesitant, our family's nexus began to expand, slowly enveloping the shadows that had long cast their gloom. James nodded, his earlier bravado shifting towards solidarity. We should organize a family support group, finding ways to help Grandma through this. She is not just a matriarch, she is our heart. Let us rebuild what we can. As murmurs of plans began to fill the gaps left by anxiety, I felt a swell of pride mix with purpose. Yes, it was messy, yes, there were still echoes of pain. But the cracks in our canvas could serve as places for light to enter. The actions we chose in the face of adversity meant everything. Together, I whispered, locking eyes with my grandmother. We're in this together, all of us. We'll push through, and we'll keep bringing light to each other. As voices faded into laughter and warmth began to envelop the room, a heartwarming twist folded into our shared reality. The love we had once allowed to falter resurfaced, reigniting flames of hope we thought extinguished. In that embrace of uncertainty and strength, my grandmother's eyes shimmered with the promise of resilience. She might have been frail, but within that soft figure was a fierce spirit, one that had weaved the very fabric of our existence. We gathered closer, a living testament that sometimes vulnerability is the first step towards healing, the truth our greatest ally. With every hand held and every heart opened, I realized that forgiveness, healing, and acceptance had once again found their way back to us. And as I squeezed my grandmother's hand, feeling its warmth pulse against my own, I whispered the words that became our foundation: let us create a truth so powerful it echoes through generations. In that moment, with shadows retreating and light beginning to break, we became not just a family bound by blood but a tapestry woven together with threads of tenacity, love, and hope, a unity that would shine brighter than any darkness that dared to approach. Because as long as we stand together, I whispered, the final truth washing over us like dawn breaking a long dark night, there is nothing we can't mend.